What's her name?
See.
Steve? I'm Simon. Wait, you know that. Sorry.
I am autistic as well.
Yeah. I like your glasses. Do we have the same glasses? We, all three of us, have like the same. That's so cool. Yeah.
And I'm non-binary.
Okay.
And
okay.
And I just want to acknowledge that the trans community as a whole, I do want to acknowledge the awful.
I appreciate it.
So sorry. And also at the same time, I think that trans people get on a day-to-day, during their day-to-day lives.
And that's awful.
Living in their lives on social media, especially. There are so many trans people that I know that are active on social media, and just, living, especially in states where gender perfect care bans are being put into place and have been put into place. They receive hate on a daily basis. They receive harassment, threats, and I don't think that that is acceptable on either side. And I think we can all
agree. Absolutely.
I think that it's important to recognize also that trans people have there is a history, and I think a lot of people think that the gender ideology is something that's new. I work in a trans archive, and we literally see photo evidence and letters and historical documents from years and years ago that we archive. And this is not a new phenomenon. And I think it's just really important to mention that, because I think a lot of people in this discussion forget that this is like something new that's happening. But this has been happening for years, and it's also very culturally intertwined. So a lot of indigenous cultures, like Two-Spirit people, there's like all over the country, like you said, traveling to different countries is really important to widen your perspective, just in general in life. I think that's really very important. And like trans people have always been here, and they've been here, and so detrans people have been here and have been here, and that is
they haven't though, because we only recently started transitioning, like in the past 100 years. When did we start?
2009 was when they started using puberty blockers
for minors. Yeah. Okay. So, can you give me? Yeah, but the detransitioners can't exist if there's no medical transition.
Right. And I guess my point here is that, like, the trans community.
Are you getting to the question? I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but we only have so much time.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to bridge two sides.
Okay, yeah, definitely.
I don't know. I think that we have to acknowledge that there is a lot of hate and harassment towards the trans people in this very moment. And I think focusing on trans people is really important, but also noting that they are a very, very small minority, as you mentioned. And
I didn't say that they were a very, very small minority of people who transition. I didn't say that's. I think trans people are also a very, very small minority of the total population.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, they're both minorities.
I guess I'm just saying, like, we do accept trans people in our community. What we don't accept is transphobic rhetoric and hate towards the
There's been zero transphobic rhetoric or hate by any.
Okay, we're new instability.
I feel like that was.
Yeah, no, you're being super respectful. Yeah. Okay, so what was the question? I'm looking for questions. Thank you for your statements.
I want to comment briefly. First of all, point of clarification. There have always been people who identify more strongly with the opposite sex, but the ideology, the exposure to the ideology among young children, that's a very new phenomenon. I was not asked my pronouns when I was a child. Beyond that, I mean, of course, like, I would hope that it goes without saying, like, of course I would want to see that feel treated, but in terms of some of the challenges that the community is dealing with right now, like, part of it is the extreme positions, unfortunately, that are being staked out by a majority of the trans community. Brianna Wu you should follow on social media if you don't already, talks about this, where, you know, if you insist on the right to colonize women's spaces, or, you know, that an 8-year-old automatically knows whether they should be medicalized or not, like, people are going to get upset. That's the reality of it. So we've got to work towards a more pragmatic political solution.
Are on bathroom uses, like folks who are trans and are getting frustrated because from my perspective and what I is sometimes, like, if I'm wearing like a hat or something and mask, I know it's really frustrating. People look at me really weird, and I have had people call security on me and say like that they're uncomfortable with me being in the bathroom. And so I'm wondering, when I'm in a space where there is a women's bathroom and a men's bathroom, I actually don't know, because what do I do if I go in the men's bathroom, you know? And then it's, how do we enforce this? Because if there is a, let's say, a trans woman who has medically transitioned,
I think I get your question.
if there's quote unquote passing or cis, how do we avoid that?
Okay. So with bathrooms specifically, I don't think bathrooms are great because super controversial opinion. But I think that like stalls, like we have like 2 feet, like I'm sitting on the toilet, right, and they can see my knees. Like that's not okay. We got to do better. We got to make better stalls. That's where it starts. Better stalls. I'm here. If I run for president, my motto is going to be, let's make better stalls. Because if we have better stalls, that means there's a better degree of separation. And for people who have discomfort around gender and sex issues, what we can do is we can have a common space with sinks and stuff. And then for people who need to do their business, we have stalls, ceiling to floor. Boom. That's how I would approach it. Yeah, that's what I was for. People disagree with me on that, totally. Yeah.
There's a lot
Or providing a gender neutral option, you know? Yeah.
that would be a situation. Shaking their heads no, so I'm just like, I know that this is like a topic, and I'm wondering if people who are shaking their heads no have opinions on this, on how that would be enforced right now, and not like
right now,
not changing the physical aspect of the bathroom.
Okay.
Right.
So yeah, we can be more specific about that. So right now, if we assume that we can't change facilities, so there are already a lot of places which I think that's a great thing. I think that's the best solution. 1. 2, in terms of bathrooms, I support bathroom segregated sex, and either way we do things. Let's say we do it on sex, right? There are going to be uncomfortable situations like the one you shared, right? I mean, I had a lesbian friend who had the same thing happen to her like all of the time, because during COVID when she was wearing a mask, she looked like a guy, you know? And that makes people feel uncomfortable, and that's rough, you know, and right, but that's a compromise. Secondly, like if we do it based on gender, I think that's a little bit worse, because I think for the majority of people, sex works, but there's a smaller portion of people for which gender segregated bathrooms works. And the reason I say this is because, and this is going to, you know, I'm sure a lot of you will get a little bit angry at me about this, but if we let biological men into women's restrooms, we know for a fact that biological men commit sexual assaults and rape at rates far higher than women. Number 1. Number 2, as somebody who has been sexually assaulted by a man, I know. Secondly, we know as well, Ian, I hope you can back me up with this, but I read a really great meta-analysis. I think, I'm trying to remember the title of it, but showing that contrary to popular belief, the rates of rape and sexual assault in, let's say, okay, so this is rough. So I don't think we can necessarily say that, let's say, actual trans women commit rape or sexual violence at higher or lower rates than men. But we can say that there are a hell of a lot of men who use the excuse of being trans to go into women's spaces and sexually assault and rape. And this also happens in prisons in great numbers. And I know there are some people laughing at this, and you can look it up. I can send you some articles if you really want. But this is something we shouldn't be laughing about. People are actually being. If you've been sexually assaulted, you would know that laughing at the fact that women are being sexually assaulted is not appropriate in any situation ever. I literally made the distinction. I'm saying that people take advantage of situations where you have gender segregated bathrooms. Men take advantage of these. They say they are a woman. That does not make them trans women, or maybe it does for you. I disagree. To then sexually assault and rape women. There are lots of trans women who have no interest in that, and I acknowledge it. And any whether we do it on gender or sex, there are compromises to be made. And I think that sex. I never said that. You're misrepresenting what I'm saying, and you're being really, really disingenuous.
The question is whether I should be able to right now say that I'm a woman. Should I? But a lot of women would care. That's the problem.
I think that this is an issue of systemic issue of sexual violence that men we need to deal with that in terms of men, in terms of captured masculinity.
And so and in my view, so my view, and you're going to get really mad at me for this, right? Is that my definition of man, and I really think it's the best definition of man, because any other definition is relying on culturally dependent, stereotypical factors or self-ID, which has its problems, as Ian pointed out just now. I think that personally my definition of man is adult human male, because that allows people like me to express ourselves however we want, and we're still like who we are, if you know what I mean. And so when, I forgot where I was going there, sorry. So that means that I personally see trans women as men, because biologically speaking, that's what they are. And I will treat them with the dignity they deserve. But you cannot dictate what I believe, if that makes any sense. Right? Because I have family friends who are trans women, and they're trans women, and they're lovely. I have no issue with them. Yeah. But I think there are necessary lines we have to draw.
I'm just wondering, in a situation where there were restrooms and like how would you ask to see their genitals? Like, is that
no, that's silly.
How would you determine if they are quote unquote real women or quote unquote real men?
How do we determine if quote unquote trans women are real quote unquote trans women?
I mean, like I'm asking you, like, how would you enforce?
Well, I'm just pointing out that question is kind of silly, and with my counter question, because either way we do it, we're going to have to. The enforcement is really difficult and weird. You know, it's like if we do it based on gender, we have to figure out, okay, who are the real trans women and who are not the real trans women. How do we do that? We don't know. If we do it based on sex, we have to figure out who is male and who is female. I think we have a higher success rate of.
So how do you, I guess, suggest that I use the restroom then? Like,
I think you should go to the restroom that is correlating with your sex.
okay, so if I do go in there and I'm kicked out, I can't use the restroom. You want me to just?
And that sucks, and that shouldn't happen. I will defend your rights to the end to use the restroom which corresponds with your sex. And I'm so sorry that ever happens. Genuinely. Like that's awful. No person should have that experience.
Right, no person should experience that. Trans people experience that every single day.
So
they cannot go in public because they cannot use the restroom. Because they are kicked out or harassed for being in the restroom that they deserve to be.
So that's a real problem. So it's a real problem, and it's a difficult thing, which no matter your point of view on the subject, there is not a great answer. And I don't have a magical silver bullet that makes everybody happy. I'm not denying that trans people have difficulty with, feeling safe in bathrooms, going to bathrooms. And my solution that I propose is gender neutral bathrooms. or some sort of communal thing with stalls. And I think that's the only viable way to really solve it, personally.
We're just not agreeing with that.
Or we have a women's bathroom, and then we have an all-sex bathroom. That's the second one. I can. So that's my thing.
Great. I have a question about the turban and the Torah studies. Is it Mr. Kingsbury or Dr. Kingsbury?
Well, I mean, Ian.
Dr. Kingsbury. Okay. So when you were talking about the Netherlands, you had mentioned that some people were not allowed to do puberty blockers because if they had other mental health conditions, and not just in the Netherlands and the US here. And then in your comments or observations about the turban study and the Torah study, you had mentioned that some of the flaws were that some people with the most severe mental health conditions would have been restricted from blockers.
Yeah.
So I'm just we're turning Torah like not in the US or
No, it's a good question. Actually, it's worth clarifying. So the Dutch protocol is that the person should have no mental health comorbidities whatsoever. In the United States, that guideline does not exist, and so the child could have anxiety or depression or an eating disorder, and they will get treated. Now, theoretically, doctors should still be engaging in some differential diagnosis and at least withholding those patients who are most severe with those mental health afflictions. But it's not binary in the United States. It's not if they have mental health conditions that they can't have or can have it. In the Netherlands as well, unfortunately, there was some infidelity to the protocol. So, like at times kids received treatment a little earlier than the guidelines said, or there could be kids who have some mild mental health conditions who receive treatment. But I mean, it's a good, important question. Thank you.
Okay, and so I'm sorry, did turban and Torah, were they in the US?
They were.
And did they restrict some kids couldn't get puberty blockers in turban and Torah studies?
Correct.
Okay, and so at least for the study, is there a distinction between like how kids are allowed to participate in studies versus how they're receiving care by doctors who, when you're not in studies?
I'm not sure if I understand that question. So,
I'm sorry.
okay, for turban, these were just people who responded to the 2015 was it Trans Youth in America survey, I think it's called.
Oh, I see. Oh, so the survey.
Yes.
So it was self-reporting?
Yeah.
Oh, so there could be a flaw in the self-reporting.
There were all these people who said that they received blockers after 18.
Got it.
Who obviously did not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mira?
Question. So you talk about how parents would respond to children. How did you like being out as an adult thing? What have your peers to have responded to in high school as it would go?
How I wish my peers would have responded. I wish, I think that's a more sort of a broad question. I wish my peers would have believed me when I said that I was sexually assaulted by them. I think that's like the number one thing. I think that would make a really big difference. I wish that my peers would not have treated me so much better just because I started identifying as trans and using different pronouns. I think that if I had any pushback whatsoever from my peers, I would have taken a moment and been like, wait a minute. Okay. Or maybe that would have radicalized me. I don't know. But that's hard to say, and what I've said is basically the extent to which I'm comfortable answering that question.
Well, thank you both of you for bravely being here to share your ideas. I think the ultimate goal for you is to save children, the potential adults to save the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for answering all the questions, which I could have. I have 10 questions, but I'll prioritize my own time. God and most myself, I'm a scientist. I totally know how bad the HIV treatment, how bad the damage to children, to people health, not only children,
Can I give you this?
also adults. Thank you. If somebody hasn't heard about yes. Myself, I'm a scientist. I totally know how bad the effect of HR treatment to people's body, no matter the children and adults. However, the current affirming care totally lie about that. I have some friends, kids, they went to HR treatment. They went to see the endocrinologist. Endocrinologist supported totally not respect, but they didn't tell them the truth. They just told children, also those people, I guess, they in their lives, say, no harm at all. You guys are young, no problem. That's why the kids were so brave. Go ahead, learn how actually to get it. They're happy. So, can you please talk into the microphone and talk to me? Okay, thank you.
So,
So that's just the big problem here. They deserve, like everybody, got the treatment, no matter HIV or any medicine treatment, they deserve to know the benefit, also the side effects. They started treatment, the side effects to the body, to the health, it's severe. However, that's the current problem that affirming care. So that's why my question to you guys, since you really educate those saving children, saving potential adults, when they grow up, they become adults. So that's how actually this is started. This medical field, this profession, this doctor can be honest to those vulnerable people to let them know the real effect, the bad effect. That's my question for you, right? How do we educate that? Now we talk about the bathroom, the ideology, all those actually, yeah, so how, that's the real situation. That's the majority of the parents who are here, I believe, that's concerned about the health effect.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
is that right? I hope I represent all of your
So, so how do we, the question was, how do we educate potential patients on the ramifications of HRT? Okay, so I remember when I was younger and identifying I remember Googling and being like, oh wow, estrogen makes your skin softer, it makes you feel emotions better, and all these different things. Wow, it seems lovely. Well, a lot of these websites, and maybe they've changed since, we're not as upfront about is the fact that they do have significant side effects like osteoporosis, heart issues, cancer that Ian mentioned, infertility, blah, 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 right? I think that there are some states, I've talked to some trans people about this, and they shared that for certain states, the doctors do have to tell them, the complete list of side effects to these medications. The follow through for that is questionable, and not all states require that. And even if you do that, if you're a kid, like I was 14, like even if my doctor was like, yeah, so you might get this heart issue, or you might get cancer, or you might get this other thing, I'm like, well, I might get all of these other things anyways, so what harm am I doing? And so, kids ultimately, I don't think are really able to understand the ramifications of HRT, even if they knew, all the clinical studies. And so that's why I think it's nonsensical for the situation to be in Massachusetts, for example, that it says in the law that there are certain cases where parental consent is not needed for minors to transition. I think that's nonsensical. First-born parents should be included at the very least, and the parents should really be educated. Again, that poses another problem because, as we saw from the WPATH files, their internal communications and a lot of people working for the organization literally said they don't think that A, kids can consent to this, or B, that parents can really give informed consent to this because it's actually kind of complicated, and risk profiles and statistics and things like that, which I'm sure Ian can talk more to.
I will say just briefly, do no harm to actually working on a resource to try to curate the literature and show what those harms are. But it actually gets back to that question earlier about credentialism. I mean, the fact that doctors either don't know what you're talking about or don't confess it, that's the nature of the problem right there. I mean, there's
There's a famous detransitioner who was told that she was going to grow a penis when she started taking testosterone. That's the nature of what people are dealing with out there with their doctors.
Thank you.
Awesome, and thank you for sharing. Yeah, thank you for coming.
So
Yeah.
I know if we talk about reserve and minor, actually, even though the about 18, so in American law, below 21 you couldn't drink. However, about 18 you can make your life decision. That's also something interesting. It's really when they turn 18, they're mature enough to make their life decision. So that's why that we probably say minor, maybe we should extend it a little more, 25.
Yeah, that's a fair point. But no, I think that's a conversation to be had for another day, because right now we're just focusing on minors. But good point. Last question, because it's 4:45. We have refreshments outside that DIAG has provided, and if you want to talk, network with each other, great. Charlie, what's the question?
I just since we got back onto the topic of credentialism and all that, I just wanted to ask, you had brought up the public European reckoning, and there's been some discussion and questions about cherry pick studies and whether people, advocating one point of view or another have the requisite credentials to be able to, speak on these issues. So I just wanted to ask about what you call European reckoning, what process that occurred, and specifically you were talking about there, whether the same accusation of cherry picking or lack of credentials and stuff.
Yeah, thanks. Good question. So again, the countries we're specifically talking about really are Finland, Sweden, and the United Kingdom. There are other European countries who are in various stages of a reckoning, where at least there are public health officials, very publicly stating there might be a problem here. But in those 3 countries, they conducted what's called a systematic review. And again, that involves actually looking at every shred of evidence and determining what it says and what the quality of that evidence is. And in those 3 countries that actually did that, the determination was basically uniform, which was that it's very hard to justify this practice. Again, they have not banned it. They are limiting it to clinical research protocols. And the reasons to do that are, first of all, you have higher guardrails to access. And second of all, actually to try to get high quality longitudinal data. So if the Swedes, Finns, and Brits can get there, then we should be able to as well. There is a problem with medicine in this country and an inability to deviate from these stifling orthodoxies. And again, I'm kind of hopeful that, regardless of how you feel about the election outcome, that at least for the people who have been propagating those orthodoxies, that this is kind of a reality check on that you can't keep this going forever. But I think we're on our way.
Yeah, I want to follow up on that, and this will be the last thing. This brings us back to the free speech issue. Without free speech, we do not have science. Period. And we see in the most elite college campuses, Harvard's just over there. So this foundation, called the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, is one of the country's leading litigation groups and advocacy groups for free expression and individual rights. Yay, we like these things. Publishes a rank of American universities and colleges every year, ranking them from most amenable to free speech and least amenable. Guess who's all the way at the bottom? Harvard. So when the people doing this research, who the best ones from the best university, go to the least open free speech wise and expression wise university, they're being taught to align with this very rigid orthodoxy. So I think that's one of the fundamental problems we have, not just in science, as you spoke to, but also in politics, in our culture, in our educational institutes. And that's really important.
Aaron Severian, who's a wonderful investigative journalist at the Washington Free Beacon, has written several pieces about the medical curriculum at both UCLA and UCSF, which are considered top medical schools. If you have not read those pieces, I would invite you to do it. It's important to understand actually how doctors are being trained nowadays. You quickly figure out how it is that we got here.
Yeah, right. Thank you for coming, everybody.